This is why Tesla was ostracized. The wisdom you're touching on is why he was called crazy. Do you remember where you were when you first came upon this technology?
It just came to me, and I had gotten a system called and it had about 50,000 different frequencies on it. If you've got a cold, if you've got a UTI, if you have prostate problems, if you have a breast lump, the list is endless, Lyme disease, parasites, any of those, there's a frequency for that. I was actually born deaf in one ear, completely deaf. Here I am, a deaf person, working with sound frequencies and trying to teach people how to use sound frequencies.
How exactly do these frequencies save you from what doctors said? There's no cure.
25 people had given me testimonies that their kidney stones went away in 30 minutes. Both my mother and sister developed breast cancer about 6 months apart. There's a frequency for every single problem that women have with their breast health.
Dr. Royal Raymond Rife. He was a controversial inventor. He had a device, and he talked about how it impacted cancer cells using the electromagnetic frequencies.
Even medical doctors on the West Coast were agreeing with him and saying that, his discovery was life-changing. But again, we had different associations step in and cause all kinds of problems. It's been banned.
3 years ago, researchers at the University of Michigan successfully used sound waves to break down up to 75% of liver tumors in rats. The immune system cleared the rest.
There's a frequency for everything.
How exactly do these frequencies save you from what doctors said? There's no cure. You're just going to have to do what we say.
Well, it was kind of a long process. Both my mother and sister developed breast cancer about 6 months apart. And my medical doctors had me come in and they just wanted me to do a double mastectomy and go on with my life. And I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a teacher. I'd been teaching school for 13 years and in my mind, I'm thinking, I can do better than that. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
So I didn't take their advice. I tried to very calmly look at them and say, no, thank you, when I had such bad thoughts in my mind that I really wanted to tell them because they gave you no options. And that's what so many women go through. So I went ahead and completed my teaching career basically and got an ND certification, started studying all kinds of natural health, and started a business called BRAS, Breast Research Awareness and Support. And that was something that I did to learn how to protect myself and my mother and my sister. And they had to go ahead and do some medical ideas, and they survived. They were just fine. Yeah. But I chose not to do anything. I wasn't having any problems anyway. That was the whole crux of the situation, that so many women are in that. So through that whole process of working with thousands of women who have, breast health concerns, I started developing frequencies because there's a frequency for every single problem that women have with their breast health. And that was really intriguing to me. I thought it was so interesting because
Sorry to interrupt you. What do you mean you just started developing? You mean you tuned into what God already placed in the world, and did it shock you when you first learned about these things?
Yes.
How did I not know about these frequencies?
Yes, it really did.
Do you remember where you were when you first came upon this technology?
Well, I think I was just, it just came to me. And I had gotten a system called a biomeridian or an MSA.
Okay.
And it had about 50,000 different frequencies on it. And when I started working with that system, then it started clicking in with me on all of the different things that you could do with frequencies. And I actually approached that company to see if I could do something on a wristwatch type of idea, and had some basic planning done for patent work, at that particular point in time. And then, it just kept getting more and more and more and more. And finally, everything fell into place to do that. But it was because of those women's need, because they had so many needs, and so many different things. They could take supplements, everybody can. We're in that mode now. You can take supplements all day long. And I know people that take 80 pills a day. It's just astronomical to me. Yeah. And I wanted to simplify everything. I knew God didn't want us to make it that hard to heal ourselves or to work with ourselves. Wow. So that was kind of my idea. Let's see what we could do. And frequencies made it all possible.
I love that it just came to you and was so unexpected. Because traditionally when people go through health journeys, I won't say the C word, because I believe that words hold frequency as well.
That's right.
Very much so if you look at NLP and the science around programming. So I'll be very mindful of my words today and in life in general. If I slip, just catch me, okay? But with NLP, the programming that happens, words like should or the C word that ends in R, these words are very shame-based. And I know you know about the Hawkins scale of emotion, where Dr. Hawkins, PhD, MD, spent his whole life developing the frequency scale, the Hawkins frequency scale. And shame is the lowest emotion that people can feel. Now, did you have conversations at that time with your family about their emotions? Like, what were they feeling? Was there any kind of guidance from either yourself or physicians or any practitioners that helped them move through their emotions?
Well, my mom was 500 miles away and my sister was 1,200 miles away or something like that, you know. And so we talked on the phone, but it was hard to, share emotions. And I don't think that they were worried about their emotions as much. They were just taking action. They were listening to those doctors do what they told them to do.
Yeah.
That was really what the procedure was. And I was the one who chose not to do what my doctors told me to do. So that kind of made it a little bit different for our emotions.
What was the choice point in you that said, I'm not going to go the traditional path?
I had already been there probably 20 years earlier. All women are supposed to do their first mammogram when they're 40 years old. And I did one and I said, I'll never let them touch me again, And my mom had 30 mammograms and my sister had 20 at the same age, So they definitely, my mom said she would get a letter every year to come get her mammogram and she'd do it,
Yeah.
And so, what I found out was how dangerous those were, And so it was a little bit hard to sometimes talk to them about it. So that's why I could finally talk to them with using frequencies and some of those ideas.
What are some of the things that I don't know, that we don't know about mammograms and the health concerns there?
Well, it's an X-ray, and so every time you are squishing your breast to about 1/4 inch thick between two metal plates and then doing X-rays through it, any woman would know it's just like popping a pimple. It just seems kind of common sense. So if there's something in there, it can spread through the body. And they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that their machines are not working like they expect them to. And then when they put X-rays, the more X-rays you have, I think the figure used to be about a 5 to 10% increase in breast cancer risk every year for every mammogram that you take.
I just can't believe that. I was telling you on the walk up to our recording, there's so many things I've learned about cymatics and sound wave therapy and energy and bioenergetic burdens that we carry in life. And we're not going to get out of this lifetime. The way that our Creator designed it is that we use suffering as a way to serve. But there's something that happens, and I'm curious for you how this played out. Because yes, we're going to get into the technology. That's a very important part of the podcast. But really the heart behind what you do is the most exciting thing for me. Oh. I've been on stages at CES and I've hosted people that have devices out there. And when I would go backstage and ask them, like, so why are you doing what you're doing? They would say, oh, well, there's just a great white space to earn revenue. And I would something wouldn't register. But that's why when I met you that I shared, there's such a heart behind what you do. So what is it about the sound waves and the healing power of sound waves that really attracted you? And how has that transformed your own viewpoint of sound wave therapy as true healing?
Wow, that's a big question.
I like to ask big questions.
Yes, you do. Yeah. So if I can digest all that, what I'm thinking is, what impresses me the most is just a verse that my friend called and told me about. She teaches a Bible school class, and she said, hey, Linda, she said, just Genesis 1:2, it says, the Spirit of the Lord was hovering. She goes, I just learned that hovering is another word for vibrating. So there you go, and that just sticks in my mind, that vibrations, now we know, law of vibration, everything in the world has its own unique frequency and vibration. So I had women come into my office that had parasites that could be connected to their breast health problems. They had viruses, they had bacteria, yeast, mold. One lady was even bit by a horse and caused unimaginable problems with her breast area. So you cannot imagine all the things that we were trying to do to work with them so that they did not have to have more drastic surgeries and that kind of thing. But there was a frequency for every one of those. They've measured every parasite. There's a known frequency for it. And there has been for almost 100 years, Yet we've missed all of that. We haven't taken advantage of it. In fact, it's been banned by the AMA. That's what gets me, some huge stories there. But so I think what I really like to share the most is that we are not taking advantage of sound acoustical frequencies that we were given. Yeah. I mean, you can hum and it can change your body. You can just feel that it's doing something. Yeah. You can listen to a song and, you have your favorite song and it comes on the radio and you turn it up.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden your mood just changes one way or the other, whichever way it needs to go.
Or songs that make you cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not even acknowledging that frequencies have the ability to do that. So we're not even using what's been given to us. And
this is so fascinating.
We're missing a gift.
It's such a gift. I love that you had scripture as part of your explanation. That's beautiful. The real thing for me, 1930s, Dr. Royal Raymond Rife. It's on the screen right now, y'all, if you're watching on Spotify and YouTube. He was a controversial inventor. Yep. He had a device, the Rife technology, and he talked about how it impacted cancer cells using the electromagnetic frequencies. 1930s to basically 95 years ago, the science was already being proven by someone who in their heart wanted to bring it to the world. Did that shape your vision? Did that shape WaveWatch in a certain way?
Definitely, because some of those frequencies that I put on the product that I developed were Rife-based. Mine are acoustical frequencies, so I had to do some mathematical work to get them in the right acoustical sound range, where his frequencies were much different than what we're using.
Okay.
But he was just truly amazing and went through so much. He's really considered the father of frequencies, yet, he died a penniless man when he had developed some of the most amazing tools ever. And even medical doctors on the West Coast were agreeing with him and saying that, his discovery was life-changing. But again, we had different associations step in and cause all kinds of problems and actually make the health of the American public or health of people around the world go backwards. We've stood still for all of those years when we could have been using and adapting those frequencies and using them.
One of the greatest things that I feel like you're doing is you're turning the, for lack of a better term, sound wave tide. It's interesting. It's a wave, right? Looking at the ocean as a metaphor. And 2022 just came out 3 years ago. Researchers at the University of Michigan successfully used sound waves to break down 75%, up to 75% of liver tumors in rats. The immune system cleared the rest. So how much science do we need to just listen to the wisdom of spirit?
I don't think we need as much science as we are taught that we need. I don't know exactly.
There's so many.
Yeah, what depth to say. But now, because of the FDA, they want a double-blind study on everything and anything before you can make any mention of it, or even quote it or any of those kind of ideas. Where before people would know in their heart, and go ahead and try something if it was safe,
Sure.
And so we've been led in opposite directions sometimes. We're told that something is good when actually the medical community only had 6 or 8, people in their study anyway, and the study was not what they portrayed it to be, So we kind of get guided in unusual directions sometimes when if we just look at our heart a little bit more and listen to what we've been told. And I'm going to go back to the Bible again. If we start looking at some ideas and praying with people, we'll realize that there are some more simpler things that we could be doing. And so my whole mantra maybe has been, keep it simple. We are not following the dictates. And every time I go somewhere, it seems to me that our technology gets more in depth and, millions of dollars have been spent on researching this. And we're searching for the tiniest little atom, so that we can put it, capture it and then somehow get it in a supplement, and the supplement costs XYZ, or the medication or the prescription. The work that goes beyond that or into that is just beyond what we need because we have simplicity been given something that is so much easier to use, and we're just not accessing it. We're not even paying attention to it.
I feel like we're just drunk on intellectualism in the modern world. We want to know the proof before we practice our intuition, but it's actually the other way around. We practice our intuition when looking at proof. Look what happened with the whole Schmovid theater, and the lockdowns and the masks. Like that was a awakening, really. It was an awakening of illusionary bifurcation between people that believe in something and people that don't. The FDA rules are interesting to me. The rules for Wave Watch, how have you navigated that world with the FDA and their nomenclature?
It was very touchy for a while.
I bet.
Because there are several ideas with Rife frequencies that I mentioned that we do have on the technology, and they were labeled a certain way so that you would know what type of frequency that you were using. But the FDA didn't like our wording, so we did have to change quite a bit of our wording and make it more general to fit within their general wellness categories, Yeah. So that was a little bit hard to swallow when you're trying to help people, and yet they seem to be locking you up so that you are not able to help people as much. It was really a sad story to me.
Yeah, it feels challenging to me to even hear you say that, because there was the reports that came out in the early 1900s, and that's when the medical establishment was founded, and the Rockefellers. And if you really look, if y'all just want to do a quick GPT or a Google search on this, we're not going to go into it too much. Y'all already know that the way that infrastructure is built is to protect the financial interest of that infrastructure, right? And it's like that with every vein of life. So the medical system isn't the only one doing it. But what is the real science starting to teach you and I about the heart knowledge that you've already known for a long time about sound waves and healing? How are science and spirit blending now in our world?
Well, again, I'm hoping I can answer your question here. But one of the things that I thought was so interesting to me is I didn't know how fast that wave frequencies or sound frequencies traveled through your body. And they basically travel the speed of light, the speed of sound, which is very, very fast. But then when we take a pill or a prescription, it is more a chemical wave, and it goes through your body at a foot a second. And so that is so slow that our body burns up 98% of that chemical wave, and only 2% is going through our body. So that all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, that's why we have to take something over and over and over again. And it might be 2 or 3 months before it starts to work. Where wave frequencies are just the opposite. They're 100% absorbed, and they're quickly absorbed, like I mentioned, going through your body, speed of sound. And it's just night and day difference. But that's why Royal Raymond Rife was pretty much shut down at that time period, because there wasn't enough money. We can say that, I'm assuming, that most people would realize that, because they couldn't sell something over and over and over again, where frequencies can be so much more targeted, easier to use, make it more cost effective, and can be used for such a variety of things that you have to have a pill for every idea that you have. I don't know how much to say about my watch yet, but there's 1,100 different types of ideas on there.
Wow.
And can you imagine having 1,100 different pills, a pill for every little problem, And so that's where they were going. And that's what the angle was. So to me, the heart of it is that it's made to work so much faster. We just don't want to take advantage of it in the methods that we have today, and the organizations that are ruling us and telling us what to do.
I love that you said the word advantage. I'm a stickler for words. I love etymology, and that's why I'm very careful in my language, especially knowing about NLP. I was telling your son before we recorded, I used the harmonized frequency, and I had played around with a bunch of them. I've been playing with it for like a month or more. And I had this burst of energy. I could not explain it. I went to get my hair cut, and I was just jabbering away at the guy cutting my hair. And I'm like, I was driving home, like, what did I take, or what was it? And I realized the only difference was that I had selected a frequency I'd never done before. And he had shared with me, and I'd love to get your science and your heart explanation of this. The harmonized frequency in the watch, the one that made me lift, what's that doing to my energy system, to my chakras?
Well, basically, that is not from our realm of frequencies. When we talk about chakras, obviously we're talking about something completely different from, originating in India. And so they just have been able to measure and to know instinctively, thousands of years ago, that different centers in your body resonated at different frequencies. Mm-hmm. And so they recognized those, and they knew those frequencies were labeled according to your heart, your heart chakra, and your throat chakra. It just goes on and on, because they have different chakras, but different frequencies relate to those. And it's kind of what we've figured out now, that your liver has a specific frequency, your heart has a different frequency. But the Indians knew it, again, thousands of years ago, and used chakras and all kinds of instruments to help to balance those chakras, so that it can be so much easier to rebalance your body. And that's what you were doing. You were getting some kind of energy from that.
Yeah, it's strange though, because I wouldn't think of harmonizing as energy creating. But then of course, if something's in harmony, then there's less coefficient drag. There's less drag on the system. So it's interesting that just a sound wave, and I put my ear up to it in the truck when I was driving, it's not super loud. It's very subtle. It's not overwhelming. It's not going to wake people up, or, in a business meeting, people are going to be like, what's that sound? How did you figure out the pitch and the tone and the range of the frequencies? And is it important that it contacts the skin?
Well, basically, I did have a prototype designer when I first started. This is my second model. This is a 2.0 version. And the first version was maybe just a little bit louder, but all you had to do was turn it down.
Okay.
Because everybody has different hearing abilities, and they could decide whether they wanted to wear it or not, or at what, frequency. And what we found was that it needed to be close to your skin, that it worked better when you could absorb it through your skin. And that whole idea there is that every cell has about 70 different receptors. And so when they feel a vibration, they will start vibrating, obviously. And so then the whole cell vibrates. Then that makes the next cell vibrate, which makes the next cell vibrate. And then it just goes through your body again very, very fast. And so it is amazing how easy that is for us to figure out and to use. So all we had to do was put the watch closer, because these frequencies are absorbed through your skin or through your bones. You don't have to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But some people have really enjoyed having the watch, being able to turn it up really loud. And then when they go into a room, they're waving their hand and make it be as loud as they can, so that everybody will look at them. It depends on the personality.
So on the skin does matter. Because that was my advocate question. I'm not going to say the D word. My advocate question was well, couldn't you just bathe yourself from a speaker? But no, this is different. It's different when you're in a room with sound that's not touching you.
Right.
Versus sound that's actually contacting your skin in a direct point, a focal point. How so?
To me, it is. I'm not sure that I would know as good a scientific answer as you might want. But they do have sound baths and sound bowls. But a lot of times, those are just one frequency. We have Tibetan bowls. We have all kinds of...
Right.
And those are one frequency, where the wave watch is a series of frequencies. So one idea might have up to 30 different sounds in it. And then together, they make that particular sound that was measured starting by Rife, over 100 years ago. And some of them will even make a beat. If you happen to hear the right one, it'll sound like it's making a beat, but they are all definitely different. So the fact that we are using a variety of frequencies makes it more important to put close to your skin, where the sound baths and the sound bowls, they are, generating for your whole body to feel.
Yeah, I wonder, I've never thought about this before. This is why I love conversations like this. In nature, they've measured, scientists, specifically Paul Stamets, has measured communication with mushrooms talking to each other, and actually placed leads into the forest floor and looked at the technology of their sound communication as a way that they exchange information, which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, if there was a frequency for nature, what would that be? Or what would be the frequency that would be in divine harmony and perfection for the earth?
It might be kind of hard to say just one frequency, because again, what I've been using is a series of up to 30 frequencies in one idea.
Okay.
But, that's a little bit opposite from chakras that just use one frequency. Each area is just one frequency. But there is a difference in those. To me, it's more targeted it hits a particular area much more quicker, where one frequency more is to bathe your whole body.
Sure.
That kind of thing. So with using targeted frequencies, things happen a little bit differently.
Ooh, how differently? How differently do they happen? What's that like?
Well, there are places that have beds that you lay on that are just bathed in sound, or another idea would be the medical community. They use lithotripsy, and that is used for breaking up kidney stones. Well, according to the Scientific American, they don't know what frequencies to use, so they just blast you with everything. And so you are, underneath this rocket type, rocket nose type looking equipment, and you're being blasted, And my neighbor told me he'd had it done, and it was like 7,000 times, like this, with every frequency that they could think of. So it wasn't targeted at all. It was just random frequencies, where the Wave Watch has frequencies on it for kidney stones that are very precise and targeted, and you're wearing it on your wrist. But 25 people had given me testimonies that their kidney stones went away in 30 minutes or so. I can't say that that's a double-blind study. I'm just saying that I do have those written testimonies on that. And that when we looked at their urine samples, it was full of all kinds of flack. It was just totally amazing. It might be salt and pepper or just white flakes or black flakes. One lady had 5 rice-sized granules, in her urine. And it was just amazing. So it did something. They were out of their pain and their headache went away or whatever in 30 minutes. Where just the opposite when you are just targeted, or not when you are not targeted, and it's just bombardment with too many frequencies.
That makes perfect sense, because every task deserves a specific tool.
Yes.
Right? No matter, like if you were, I used to be an automotive mechanic. So I look at the human body like a car. But a car that, if you tried to operate on a car while it's moving, it's kind of hard. So we're more complex than a car. But I think about, I used to have like $30,000 in tools, and every little tool had its own specific function. And so looking at the high level of how much technology went into the watch and figuring out all the mathematics, how long did that take you to do?
Well, I actually built on things that had been done previously, but used completely.
You had some help.
Yes. And, I used completely different technology to put it into. So that made it very much different, because Rife technology is, it's a big machine like this, and sometimes you put your feet on a metal plate and you're holding brass bars, and then you are absorbing frequencies that the machine generates, and it costs $20,000, And I just kept saying, we can simplify this. We can make it so much more simple. So that's, how I got some of those ideas and started. And then I did mathematical ideas to change them to different acoustical sounds rather than the higher range sound that Rife had those in.
So that's when being a school teacher and an educator came through.
I would say so.
Do you find this so fascinating that in our life where we do something for 5 years or 10 years, and then we have, what Joseph Campbell calls the hero's journey, where there's the separation, initiation, and return. And when you return, you actually share that it was so much more simple than we made it so complicated.
Yes.
And I find that's the case in my life. It boils down to me just being honest with myself and my children and my fiance and my business and my audience. It's like honesty and the golden rule is what we're all being trained for, but we're so resistant to it.
Yes.
We're so resistant to it. What do you find in your world of healing? Because that's what your world is. You've become a healer. Maybe you didn't set out to be that as an educator. You wanted to teach children, or how old were your students?
Middle school and high school.
So you wanted to better the future generations. Did you ever in your wildest dreams think, I'm going to be a mathematician technologist that introduces sound wave healing to the world?
Of course I didn't. But I don't know if you've heard this part of my story. I was actually born deaf in one ear, completely deaf. So that's the part that really amazes me. Here I am, a deaf person working with sound frequencies and trying to teach people, how to use sound frequencies naturally. But that helped me, They didn't discover it until I was in 3rd grade. But I was, missing a part in one of my ears on my left side. And so how did I not give out the idea that I was deaf? Nobody knew, until 3rd grade. So what did I learn? I can't necessarily read lips that well, but I must have been able to do something. And they said I did put my hand on people's shoulder a lot, and look in their face, in their eyes and stuff like that. But for some reason, I was able to harness those ideas and convince people that I could hear okay, Yes. And I learned to sit in the front row and just silly stuff like that. But as I, went through high school, I played several musical instruments. But when I went to college, I started playing drums. And that was the instrument that was my saving grace, probably. It just calmed me down or, gave me all of these, restful ideas and just something that I continued to do for 35 years. I played drums in a band.
Sweet. What was the name of your band?
Well, several bands, and it was in Wyoming. It was country bands,
Okay.
Yeah. So that actually was in really good stead, that I did not know all of that time how important sound was and what it was doing for my soul.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I think about Stevie Wonder or anybody that doesn't have sight. They rely on, when one sense is taken away, the other senses become stronger so the body gets homeostasis. It's so interesting that I didn't know that about your hearing. So the hearing of the sound is different than the feeling of the sound.
Yes.
This is a core concept. I want you to unpack that for us.
Well, it is not that big again. It's simple. We get so many things, we hear so many things through our ears, and that goes directly to our brain. But the same way when we feel it and it goes through our bones just zip frequencies through them and go up and down our spine into our brain also. So our body is so unique, the way God made it, that it doesn't matter if you're a deaf person. You can still feel and get that sensation through that. And I don't know that there's a huge difference in which way you are absorbing those frequencies, maybe is a big thing, because a non-hearing person can get just as much good out of the watch absorbing them as someone who can hear. So it is very unusual that way, that you don't have to hear the sound. You just need to feel it.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I've taught breathwork since 2016, which is wild to even think about. I can't believe 9 years has gone by. And the one thing that I know that breathwork is doing is it's moving energy. It's moving the bioenergy that we have in our body. And sound is a movement source of its own. So from a sound healing technology versus a wave or technology of cymatics, are they one and the same? Sound and the wave?
Wow, you have some good questions.
I like to go deep, Linda. And if you don't know, the honest answer is that you don't know, because I love your simplification of things. And I think you just know it works.
And I think that's a way to say it again, that they are very similar, but I don't know that they're that different. Yeah. We haven't really studied it that much. And it's very sad, because the first sense that we have in the womb is hearing. And they say it's like a drum corps, if I don't know how they could tell that, but that's the sound that a baby would be hearing. It would be as loud as listening to a drum corps. And then sound is the last thing normally that we have as we pass away, to another world. And so in between time, what do we do with sound? Not much. We communicate with each other and we listen to music and stuff, but we're not harnessing it in any way that is good for our body when we could be using it, because sound just reverberates and does so many things, whether it's in a waveform, whether it's, through our ears or through our bones and our skin. All of those ideas work together so that our bodies can absorb that sound.
Well, I'm living proof that we complicate things, that we're searching for this crazy big answer. And it usually boils down to something that's so light and freeing. I don't know the scripture on this, but I know I've read this in lots of mysticism, that the truth feels light and lies feel heavy. So when we're around somebody and they're not telling the truth, we can feel it. We have a somatic nervous system, a somatic neural system that allows us to sense. Actually, Dr. Judd Brewer, I was interesting. He said that, I was interviewing him. He said that our body, they've measured, can actually receive a response almost a half second before our mind can process it, which I find that utterly fascinating. So that way the somatic neural tree that's connected to the rest of our CNS can sense something a half of a second before our brain, our mind can process it and take it through its true or false faculty. What do you make of that when it comes to your technology?
Well, that's why I'm such a big fan of muscle testing. I've taught people how to muscle test or do kinesiology for 15 years probably now, because that's what I'm sensing. We can sense things quicker than our brain tells us things. And so in my technology, we are just using it to help people to drill down to a frequency that they could use a little bit earlier and quicker if they were using some muscle testing to feel whether their body wants this or doesn't want it.
So I know you have calls that you support with the WaveWatch community. Do you teach people how to muscle test so that they know which frequency is going to be best for them?
Yes, we have done that. We have several hours of calls on muscle testing. And then I've had a friend that has really dug deep and had several certifications on muscle testing or kinesiology. Also teach that on Zoom calls on a Wednesday.
Because I'm sure that like somebody's going through some kind of bioenergetic burden. They have pain, they have trauma, they have illness, dis-ease, right? The opposite of ease. They just have dis-ease. I'm doing my best to simplify with you. But it can be a bit overwhelming for somebody that reaches out, makes the investment in the watch, and it's like, what do they do? Where do they go? How do they start? What's that been like for you to walk people from just purchasing, making the investment, to then having them get the result that they're wanting? What does that process look like?
Well, so I have at least 75 different programs on showing them different ways and that they can use the WaveWatch for many, many different things. And then I also have on our written instruction booklet, start here. This is the thing that people need the most, to start here. And then again, teachings about muscle testing and that kind of thing. So I don't want to get too far off.
Please go in the weeds. Go for it. Yeah.
But we tell people that they should always start on what we have labeled first wave. That's what we call it, first wave, so that they know that they need to play Lyme disease, because so many people are really not aware how dangerous Lyme disease has gotten in our society and the problems with that. And I have actually 2 hours of teaching programs on that, why it's important, and the breakdown of everything. So like when I'm on an airplane, which I just was, I played Lyme disease, because you can get on the airplane without any trouble, and somebody on that airplane has Lyme disease, and you can get off carrying that because they have found it in every single body fluid. You don't have to be bit by a tick anymore to get Lyme disease. So, I try to teach them things like that and show them this is where you start. You're not protecting yourself from Lyme disease. Then the second idea we tell people to start with is parasites. And again, parasites are something that medically they're not really taking care of at all. And this is something that needs to be done because parasites are connected with so many health problems now that they're not telling us about. So this is a great way to back that up. And then the next thing that I tell them is something we labeled wave defense, and that is specific frequencies for different kinds of viruses and bacteria, parasites, yeast and molds that can be connected with that C word that ends in R again,
Yep.
We're not protecting ourselves. We're not taught any way to protect ourselves when it should be kind of common sense. And then the last one that is so important, or another one, I guess I have two more, but is called just detox, wave detox. And of course we need to be detoxing from plastics. Are you there on that one? And EMFs and a variety of things. So people are not detoxing enough. And then the last one is just wave relief. And that is actually a whole idea for inflammation and trauma, pain, that kind of thing, that swelling, many different phrases for that.
Sure.
But people really need support with that. So those are the main areas that we tell people to start with if they don't know. And even if they're sick, Lyme disease can be connected with 300 different diseases, and they're never taught that by their doctors.
Have you ever dealt with that personally, Lyme?
I have not personally, but I have worked in that field for many years now.
Yeah.
And seen it over and over again. Somebody will come and they'll say, I've been sick, and it's always Lyme disease, but they haven't been bit by a tick. So there's no, or you go, you see whole families that have Lyme disease, and one person in the family may have been diagnosed, but then all of a sudden the rest of them get sick, but they have a different disease because there's 300 connected with it. So they never connect that they pass those problems back and forth. And so those are huge places to start with. And so sometimes we just have a big turnaround just by following that particular folder right there.
It's interesting that you have people start with, it's 5 frequencies. That's great.
5 sets.
5 sets of frequencies. You said the word trauma, which is both physical and emotional. I believe through my research that it's also intergenerational. If you look at the work of Mark Wolin, and especially with what I'm speaking about this week with emotional epigenetics, there's so much scientific publication about inherited trauma. So trauma is not just getting in a car accident. Trauma is also that you yourself experienced abuse or neglect or, God forbid, sexual abuse, things like this. It's a really sensitive topic, right? And it deserves so much respect because trauma is so viscerally real for people. Yet when we look at how trauma leaves the body, it's essentially, for simplification standpoint, it's the same way that it came in. It must be felt. It must be experienced to leave. Do people, I know from breath work that when people have cathartic experiences, they'll engage the trauma, learn the lesson from the trauma so that they don't pass it on to their children. That's why they're doing the work. But they cry, they emote, right? Have people shared with you that in certain frequencies that they have emotional release or emotional catharsis?
Definitely, yes.
How so?
Several people have called to say that, they just started crying. They just broke down and started crying when they were playing those frequencies. And that's what they needed to do. They knew that, Yeah. I have some tears in my eyes at that point in time too, when people have received that. And I worked with several soldiers that have a lot of PTSD, plus the physical side of it also, emotional and the physical. And that has been a great, go together. You have to work with both of them, not one or the other, to get some of those changes to be made in the body.
What do you sense is actually going on there when you introduce a frequency or frequencies and it's moving really what I call the bioenergetic burden, which is essentially there was a memory that was created, there was an imprint on the epigenome, which then turned off one DNA piece and turned on another. So the body could be pre-wired for hypervigilance because of the trauma. I find it interesting that the frequency conversation for me is fascinating because really what we're doing when we're going back to the trauma or the memory is we're reassociating with it. We're re-identifying and creating a new story, if you will, that the trauma happened for me, didn't happen to me. There's catharsis for sure. I wonder from a frequency standpoint, what do you believe is actually going on there? How does it move the energy from the trauma itself, if you were to guess?
Well, I think that's called resonance, basically. So whether it happened in a different generation from you and you're still carrying it, everything in your body is vibrating at a certain frequency. And so if we send a frequency in that is the same frequency as something that is setting in your body, whether it's in or out, those two frequencies are going to meet and they're going to self-amplify and then they're going to change. So whether it's more a healing or putting something back in place, or according to Tesla, Nikola Tesla, he says that they can self-amplify and break apart. So then he's talking more about viruses, bacteria and things like that. So organisms can actually fall apart and be killed, is his word. And he calls that the mortal oscillation rate. And what we know it as is the goblet, the crystal goblet. Somebody sings a high note and breaks the goblet.
Oh, yes.
But have we ever thought about using that same technique to kill a virus? No, we don't do that. We don't think of that. And that's exactly where I wanted to go with the Wave Watch, is to say, it's so easy. We just need to apply the resonant frequency. So if you have a frequency like this that was measured and the same frequency is in your body, they're going to meet. But if that frequency isn't in your body, it's just going to go all the way through. So it's not going to cause any problems at all. So that's what exactly makes frequency safe, because people will say, oh, what if I play the wrong frequency? It's not going to do a thing. It's just going to move through your body without interacting with anything.
Yeah. And anybody that has ever heard this phrase, I'm just going to conceptualize what you just said. When people say your vibe attracts your tribe, or, oh, that person has good vibes, Linda. What are we really saying? We just like their frequency.
Yes, because we can feel how they're...
We can feel them.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Again, just the simplification of this is so profound. So where do you think that the sound healing and sound wave technology is headed, and what's Wave Watch's role in that?
Well, a lot of education. Because we have been taught that everything has to be hard and that it has to be only geniuses that can make the next big if I can say prescription or medication or whatever. It has to be really hard and cost millions, which I've kind of spoken to already.
Yeah.
When in actuality, it could be so simple if we would just open our eyes and use what's already in front of us. And I think that my role is to continue to educate, and to let people know, hey, think about this. And so one of my favorite sayings is, there's a frequency for that. So, and that's what we need to keep in our mind, that, if you've got a cold, if you've got a UTI, if you have prostate problems, if you have a breast lump, if you have, the list is endless, Lyme disease, parasites, any of those, there's a frequency for that.
Sure.
And that's what we ought to be thinking about first. That's what we need to imprint in our mind. There's a frequency for that. And then learn and follow through what tools we need that would have that frequency on it, rather than depending on a chemical wave that takes months and months to work sometimes.
Yes, that's so good. Okay, I love that you said the tool. So we get established with a new baseline of frequency. Let's call it a homeostatic frequency. It's bringing us back to center. And then our intuition can be stronger because our physical body is full. Our capacitor is full. I call it the wellness pentagon: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial self. So if we're
got that rattled off very well. Thank you.
Oh,
that's perfect.
No, really. Like if those 5 sides of us are nourished from a frequency standpoint, then we can have the intuition even come on. Maybe some could even call it the voice of God within us. It's a little whisper that comes in. I heard Gay Hendricks talk about this once. He said, when you're ignoring the wisdom of spirit or God, you will get tickles. And if you ignore it for long enough, you'll get a sledgehammer. And he talked about that in a documentary that my audience is like, we've heard this 1,000 times. It's called Finding Joe. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. Y'all have to watch it. Anyways, my question for you is, once we fill our capacitor, once we're nourishing these sides of ourselves and we're using the sound wave technology to get us more attuned, then can't the intuition actually go out and select the perfect tool that it needs? Because from a frequency standpoint, it's being directed to do so.
Yes. Your intuition does improve and changes, and you don't even need to muscle test it anymore. You just know. You just know intuitively.
How has that played out for you in your own health journey as a woman, as a mother, as an entrepreneur? How has that one aspect played out for you?
I think if I could digress a minute, you said something about, you get more than a tickle, you might get a.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That kind of happened with me. I had the idea for the Wave Watch about 15, 18 years ago. And then my life changed quite a bit. And the technology wasn't there even at the time when I, had the idea for it. And I was driving around out in the country one day, and all of a sudden, bang, I got this hit on the head, basically. It's like, it's time to get your watch moving. It's time to develop it. Seriously, I heard that in my head. Was it like
a voice?
Yeah.
Were you in the car just driving?
Yeah, I'd say so. Or whether but it just came through. It's time.
Undeniable.
Yeah. So I went home and started developing it. I knew the time was right, and I found the technology at that point.
Oh, that's so good. Wait, before you get to the second part, I have to I love this. There's an author out there, Stephen Pressfield, and his books are phenomenal. The War of Art is where this quote is from. And he said, when the muse visits, you have to run and immediately put what the muse is telling you into form. Because if you don't, the muse will go visit someone else. Was that what was happening for you?
I don't know if I felt that, but I know that I went right home and I started looking and researching and contacting my 2 sons. And
that was the muse, yeah.
Okay. So I got busy on it because it had set for a while.
Yes.
And the technology wasn't there. So what could I say? But then all of a sudden, I was told it's time.
Wow. Okay. Let's go back to intuition.
Okay.
So once that our capacitor, or what I call the pentagon, is full, then how do you believe that the sound wave technology can direct us to the perfect tool, whether it's a mentor, or it could be a supplement, it could be food, it could be a cleanse of some sort?
I think we just start, we start feeling our own vibrations and our vibes, and we just know that vibration is what we need. We're actually reaching for it because it is the right vibration. Or we know that person, we can almost see a person across the room and go, oh my gosh, they've got your eyes don't even have to meet sometimes. You can just feel.
It's like a lightness. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it raises your consciousness, I think, when you start paying more attention to those vibrations and you have them rebalanced in a better stage.
It's so good. Lines. People reach out to me and they're like, how do I do this? Or how do I heal that? And like tons of questions all the time. And I usually just exhale softly and I just say, just start with what's ailing you the most. Just start where you are with the honesty of where you are, and then it'll lead you to everything else that you need. What do you make of that?
I think that's really true. I do like to open people up by teaching them muscle testing because they don't trust themselves,
Yeah.
And then when you've got them to that stage of trust, then they can reach out more. To me, is if you've given them some examples, you can prove to them that their intuition can work, and then they'll go beyond and continue to raise their vibrations and do those steps that they feel they should take.
We're on the same wavelength, Linda.
I think so.
we are. And so is the audience. Like, this conversation has the power to change a life. I mean, really, like, not to toot my own horn, every conversation that I hold at this table or on this podcast, I truly believe it can impact someone. I really do. I would never have a conversation that I thought was just pseudoscience or only placebo, but there is this aspect that I want to talk to you about. And it is the biology of belief that Bruce Lipton talks about, right? The placebo effect that I've done podcasts on before. When I have an intention of healing in my heart, and when I know that I'm worthy of healing, and I know my worth, and I know who I am, then I can be open to this kind of technology. If I have a mindset where this won't work, it's just a watch, sound waves aren't a thing, I haven't looked at the 55,000 published studies of cymatics and sound wave therapy. If you have a closed mind, then nothing will work, actually. And how does that conversation come up in your communities? I'm sure that people are led to it because intuitively they're like, this could work, and then they talk themselves out of it. How does that work in your world?
I think more in my world, I see the women open to it very, very much so. And they might go ahead and buy a wave watch, and they're going to prove to their husband that it works because he's the skeptic more often than not.
We are damn skeptical,
yeah.
aren't we?
And I'll put you on the spot there. And so
God,
then when it works for the woman, then all of a sudden the guy is like, oh, okay, I'll try this. And then he becomes a believer, so he has to see it in action first. And that's a huge thing.
That's been the case for my relationship. The stuff that I've learned about has been a huge part of my connection to the wisdom, to the feminine wisdom that's in my fiance, my soon-to-be wife. And that's why on our logo on the mic here, Linda, there's a triangle. And that's the symbol of the chalice of renewal, which is essentially feminine energy, or the capacity to heal or nourish in masculine and feminine energies. Women nourish well. They're built to nourish. Men nourish too, right? We access feminine energy in us, but when men are resistant to the healing power of feminine energy, which is a frequency, then it brings chaos. And look at our world right now. Look at how much ignorance we have in politics and in media and in everything that's so masculine driven. It has no connection to water. It has no connection to the frequency of feminine nurturing, that we've really put ourselves in a bind here. I think that whether somebody starts with a wave watch or just having the conversation of honesty with themselves, they're eventually going to get to the conversation of what is my frequency? It's going to happen at some point. What do you make of that? Well,
if you look at Emoto, a book that was written about water and frequencies.
Yes.
Our bodies are 60 to 80% water. And so whatever is in our heart is what our body is vibrating at. And he's got pictures to really prove that.
Oh, he's got massive scientific proof.
If we just, roll that concept over to, he's talking about our bodies. Our bodies are water, mostly water. So whatever we're feeling and portraying in our soul is what is going to come out in people to feel.
Yeah.
And if it's a negative frequency, other people are going to feel that. It's going to be very important to make sure that we have pure and unbelievable frequencies that are as high as we can get them, so that we are working on healing and curing people, helping people, however you want to say that.
Yes, and you have a really lighthearted frequency. You carry that. And your world where people are coming to you, their frequencies can be very heavy. How do you maintain your frequency without bypassing your own emotions and stay in service to people that can really bring, if you're not careful, your vibration down? How do you maintain a higher level of vibration when helping?
Well, I happen to have a frequency on the watch. That's called calming.
There's a frequency for that.
Yes, there you go. You learned it already.
Okay.
So I actually do play those frequencies a lot, you know. and I'm not a meditator, but prayer, and I'm not
one and the same. Prayer and meditation.
But just having hope, maybe, thinking very positively about as many things as I can is what technique I use, I guess.
Well, personal question, because I'm a personal guy. Has there been an event in your life that the sound wave technology has really helped you through beyond the familial C word? Has there been another health journey or aspect to you and your own health that this technology has really impacted you in a positive way for?
Well, I think I've got several examples, but just one on me personally. When I was putting together a folder that had a lot of different pathogens that could be connected to that negative word that we are not saying at all.
I love
hardly.
that we're not saying
that, whatever. I was walking around with my prototype watch, and it was playing, and all of a sudden, right here in my thumb area, it felt like on both hands, it felt like I was getting stabbed. And I literally went, and it was hurting for 8 seconds probably. It wasn't very long at all, but enough for me to go, And I looked at my watch and it was playing Epstein Barr virus. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's a really negative frequency. I tell women that it is connected with breast, the C word.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my goodness. I wonder what that means. I just need to pay attention to that more. So I went ahead and it was just an 8-second pain. And I went to bed that night. I got up the next morning and all my arthritis was gone. I had arthritis here really bad for a couple of years. It was really bothering me. And I hadn't found any frequencies. I'd even played a frequency that was for arthritis and it didn't take care of it. But the Epstein-Barr virus frequency took care of the arthritis in my hands. And I just thought that was so phenomenal. And so then now I just play that frequency once in a while just to keep my body as clean, as pure as I can so that I hopefully don't have any problems at all. And I know I won't because I'm very positive about it,
Wow. That reminded me of Anita Morjani. She had an NDE experience. Are you familiar with this story at all? It relates, so just bear with me. And she had an incurable disease and she actually left her body, I think for a minute or two. And she was able to float above and see everything. And when she came back into her body, she knew exactly what the emotional load was. She knew exactly why she had passed and come back. And she could see how she had created it all. And doctors had zero explanation, no scientific explanation whatsoever for this spontaneous survival. So spontaneous healing, spontaneous survival, people that have had NDEs, this is a well-documented scientific line as well. There are just so many things that science cannot ever explain, and I don't want it to. And with what you just shared, spontaneous healing is possible, is what I'm saying. But the mind of man or our drunkenness on intellectualism, it, from a placebo standpoint, doesn't even give spontaneous remission, spontaneous healing, spontaneous survival any room to be real because their mindset is so against it that from an energy or consciousness perspective, it could never even be real. What do you make of that?
I think that's how we've been taught for our generation, several generations, in fact. And that's a big thing that we need to be overcoming. And hopefully, just the idea of teaching and learning about energy and frequencies more and more and putting our trust in them, maybe more than we are on some of the other things that we are taking in our system that can be very negative and have side effects. That once we put our trust into something that has no side effects, and that's much more cost effective. And, we get that trust going, then things can change so that we are changing our lives in many different ways.
I love that you've said trust quite a bit. And in my talk this week, I'm describing how our neural tree goes from either trauma or trust. And it's actually epigenetic. I mean, it switches on and off DNA without changing the DNA. So what you're saying is scientifically true if you search for the research. But there's so much research that is funded because of its financial interest. And that's probably the biggest cloud over this technology that I think the sun is starting to poke through. Do you feel that? It's 2025.
I do.
Where do you see the sun poking through in 2030?
Well, I'm hoping we're way beyond this, that these are something that everybody could be wearing. They are. I have people write to me that are fans that say, thank you for developing something for the world. And I'm not trying to be, but it is something that everybody could wear.
Yeah.
And if you look back to ancient technology and ancient stone sculptures, the Sumerians, they all had this on their wrist, the exact shape. And it looked like a wristwatch.
Hold up. Stop the bus.
There's a whole series of pictures of ancient Sumerians wearing something that looks just like this.
Interesting. So I'm a little bit steeped in Sumerian wisdom. And when I say a little, I mean a tiny bit. But I'll make sure that on the screen is the exact image you're talking about right now. And we'll also link it in the show notes, this research. I know that in the Sumerian text, there was essentially a piece of our DNA that's said to be removed, where we actually knew who we were. And this week, what I'm talking about for emotional epigenetics is that this is a sacred science. It's a technology to remember who we are. Way before the world came in and society came in and said, you can't heal this, you can't be healthy, you can't be well, you can't be anything you want to be because that's the way we can control you. What I'm hearing from you is that this Sumerian text and these photos in the hieroglyphics per se, they had photographs of people wearing what's to be some sort of a wave watch.
Mm-hmm. A watch that looks...
A watch of some sort.
It looks just like this.
Interesting.
It's the same shape. It's round. It's on the wrist,
Okay. So are we remembering? Is that what I'm saying? Are we remembering who we are?
I do not know. That has been my question since somebody shared those photos with me. It's like very unbelievable that we have missed that for so long. Yes. How could an ancient civilization have something that looks like a watch, 2,000 years ago? And what was their purpose for it?
Right.
So we need to be growing,
Wow. I mean, we've gone into some really fun territory for me. What is something about this healing power of sound wave that most people don't know, or that most people might get wrong the first time they hear it, the first time they see it?
I would say the fact that there's a frequency for that. We've been mentioning that. There's a frequency for that. People do not believe that sound frequencies can work on so many health ideas. Again, we're indoctrinated we have to have a pill for this, we have to have a pill for this and that, where we only need one type of a tool that would emanate frequencies that could be used for so many different ideas that could be very targeted. And they can't fathom that. It's like, no, there's no way. Yes, that's how it was created. The simplicity of it. Everything has a vibration and a specific frequency. So we just need to use them on one tool.
But this is why Tesla was ostracized. This wisdom the wisdom you're touching on is why he was called crazy.
I would say so.
How much did his science inform you in your mission and in WaveWatch?
I don't know. I would say Rife was more, what I worked with.
Okay.
But I was fascinated by Tesla, and a little tidbit that I say a lot is that he was supposedly friends with Mark Twain, and he had a vibration plate that they used together as friends a lot. They would alternate or whatever and get together and use this vibration plate that Tesla had made. And they had some various assorted reactions to using it, And I just thought that was so interesting that I had no idea that Mark Twain and Tesla might have been buddies in their time.
Yeah, and of course, we see Elon with Tesla. I don't know how he got that. I'm not either pro nor against Elon, but a lot of like us going to Mars and all this use of Tesla's name, it doesn't resonate with me, to use our nomenclature. What does resonate with me is taking our earth and our life and the people that we have around us and making it beautiful and making it whole. And that's not as sexy as blasting off to outer space and living on Mars. It's, again, this intellectual thing. And the question for me when I first met you and your family, it's not easy to do a family business, right? All your stuff is going to come up, right? Childhood dynamics, parent and son dynamics. What's it like to have God and spirit in your business and also be doing it with family at the same time?
Well, I had a little bit of advantage. I taught my sons for 3 years in school. Now, most parents do not have that advantage.
Oh, yeah, unless they're homeschooled.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was not homeschooling. Okay. It was in middle school. And so when they said that they would like to come to work for the WaveWatch, I'm going, now you remember what it was like for 3 years of me being your teacher. is that okay? That's,
You're going to go to school again.
Just remember, make sure we can work together. And so it's actually been fun. So we've actually had 3 years of, previous history.
Yeah.
And that kind of idea that made it very simple. And my boys are amazing. Both of them are singers and writers. And John is a song leader in church for 16 years. And my other son, Joseph, goes to Europe almost every summer and sings in churches and cathedrals with his wife, Tammy.
Ooh.
So they have such a heart for God that they taught me more than I even know. So I've absorbed their frequencies.
Yes. And their father, how was his input on the family business in any way?
He's not involved with it this time. It's my ex-husband is their father.
Got it.
And so he's not involved with it at all.
He's not. Does he believe in what y'all are creating?
I think he does. Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great.
And then I am remarried, and my new husband loves the Wave Watch, and in fact that's how we met, was through the Wave Watch.
Wow, how did that work?
He bought one and loved it immediately. He says, "I want to meet whoever made this." He didn't even have any idea whether it was a man or a woman. I just want to meet whoever invented this. And so when we met, it was just like frequencies came together. So we were just feeling this vibration. It was really a fun story.
That is so cool. So yeah, for people that are feeling alone, because, it's on the screen again, the Hawkins scale. I go back to this because it's such a huge pillar of my learning and my teaching, the Hawkins scale of emotions, which is essentially frequency. And it's really cool because he actually was an applied kinesiologist. That's how he built the Hawkins scale. He was also an MD and a PhD. So this is like a serious scholar here.
Yes.
And the way that he came up with it was by doing muscle testing, but also having a real relationship with God. And one thing that he said that is so profound, he said, this is really about detaching from our ego. And I know this because I was the most attached person to my ego in this room. And I find that really interesting. So in that same vein, what parts of you, of your ego or of your pride, have you let go of leading this mission?
Boy, you're making me think again. I've probably had to let go of the fact that I'm aging, that I'm getting, that word, maybe I shouldn't have even said that word. Let's edit that one out,
Maturing.
Okay. Thank you. Maturity.
Yeah.
But, so I need more help. The business is thriving and I'm not educated in all of the new things that are around that I should, and could use some help on. So just the fact that I can turn it over to a younger generation has been what I needed to do.
That's so cool.
It's been great to be able to do that, to feel comfortable to do that.
Yeah, that's an honest answer, because the ego in the medical community, and even honestly at this conference we're going to be at, the ego that can be on a stage or teaching, it can really dampen the wisdom or the message that's coming through. So I love that you said that you're actually passing it off, because one day we're not going to be here.
That's right.
And it's both sad, but it's also so empowering because we're here now. So what are we going to do about it? I almost want to ring a big gong, in the vein of frequency, and just let people know that the aloneness that y'all feel and the disconnection from God, the disconnection from self, it's just a program. It's just a frequency. You have been trained. You have been trained to forget who you are. You've been trained to disconnect from yourself and that which created you. And I just wonder if you could wave a magic wand, that in 10 years from now, the power of this healing technology was part and parcel the same thing on PubMed that taking creatine might be, or taking colostrum might be. How do you see that playing out potentially?
Well, I think it's going to get there because we're starting some studies now. We have been working for 3 or 4 years just to get testimonies.
Yes.
And we had so many testimonies on the Wave Watch. Seriously, we have about 1,100 frequencies, but we have 500 kinds of testimonies, and some of them more than once, obviously. So we had to get a feel for what the watch worked best for. So we're looking at anxiety. We're going to start some studies on just pain of different kinds, and then nerves, especially nerves, and PTSD, I guess, kind of anxiety. And those are so important that we do those studies. And then when those studies are done, completed, we move on to the next step. But hopefully that is educating. But then we have more studies that we can be doing because we can be showing that frequencies work on XYZ amount of health problems. And so we need to be proving in some way so that this scientific community, so that we can get in PubMed.
Yeah. And I'm not, by the way, I hope you don't feel this, I'm not anti-science. I think that science and spirit deserve a seat at the table because they are actually one and the same. There's just a lot more ego in science. Here in Austin, there's a lot of ego and spiritual too, but they both deserve a seat. And so the real thing that I think you're touching on with your work and with this technology is just bringing people to a place where they just feel at home in their body. And that might be a bit woo-woo for some people. Actually, nobody in this audience, like we're all working on our neural tree and feeling safe in our bodies. And what would you pair this with? Because if you're just holding a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. I'm not saying this is a golden ticket for every single thing you need in your life. What would you pair this technology with that could accelerate healing even more?
Well, I tell people to make sure that they're walking barefooted in the sand a lot, that they connect with the earth, which is, again, a part of and parcel of Tesla's information. He was going there with the frequencies from the earth. And then, to also make sure that you are emotionally balanced by opening yourself up and to work on your emotions very much. Yeah. And, you do have to eat right. I mean, just some basic things. So just be basic. Don't be over the top and unaffordable and untouchable because you do so many things. Just relax with what you're doing.
That's such good elder sage wisdom right there. One of my biggest learning curves in life, Linda, has just been to trust. Just trust God, trust life, trust myself. My story, how I came into the world, my mom was bipolar. She struggled quite a bit. My dad was dealing with his own demons. And so I chose this lifetime to come into that was pretty challenging up front. And a lot of people do. I'm not the only one. Do you find that people that are on a healing path or people that are doing healing work like yourself, they are welcomed into their life in a really challenging entry point, if you will? I find this to be the case, that most healers or most people that are doing very big things, it comes from a recognition of their own wound or a recognition of their own pain. And then they transmute, almost like a caterpillar and a chrysalis becomes a butterfly. They transmute that and they use their pain to be of service or purpose.
I think that's very true. And everybody has their story. And I just call mine a story. I don't think it's that, to me, it wasn't that painful, but, I was missing a body part,
Sure.
And so it was so much more important for me when I had problems with my mom and sister. I didn't want to lose another body part, if you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
And so just being silly on that, but we, we have our story and yes, we have to overcome those. And sometimes the healers are the ones that have had stories that they've overcome and things that they've changed in their life.
Yeah. Healing does not have to be so freaking serious. There's this seriousness in the medical community and in the world. I want to give respect to it. Like, losing a part of your body can be hard. Losing a loved one can be really hard. So how do you balance seriousness and playfulness in what you do? How do you hold those two?
Boy, you are just asking some good questions.
I'm a deep guy.
I'm not sure that I know,
Well, that's even better. That's an even better answer.
I guess that makes me think. I don't know that I know how to balance,
Well, it's probably because it's just embodied in you. You don't even need to know. Much like you said, when we're muscle testing and we know who we are, we don't have to have something tell us. We just know. So you've just developed an inner knowing of how to be playful in a world that can be kind of serious.
I hope so.
At times. Well, this has been so fun. I've really enjoyed getting to know you because I don't think people buy anything where they don't believe the heart or the energy behind it. And you live and operate in a world of energy. This healing technology, it's on the screen right now, y'all. This is amazing. I had an energy burst today that was so good. That's just my own story. Y'all give it a chance and give it an honest try. What is the honest try? Is it a month? Is it 2 weeks? What is it?
It's about 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
A month, turnaround time to get it back to us if you're not pleased with the watch,
Okay. I'm sure not many people send it back though.
No, we don't have a lot.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good turnover.
When you know who you are and when you're in mastery of the 5 domains of life and when you're calling in these certain healing tools, really, that's what this is, a healing tool. life becomes more playful. Life doesn't have to be so serious. For people that are really wired in seriousness, can you give them parting guidance about the heaviness and the seriousness they feel, that there's a frequency for that?
That's what I want to say. There's a frequency. Well, when you know, and you've seen grown men cry when they're playing through emotions, you know that that was something they needed. And most of us do need to work on our emotions more. We are not aware of how much that is necessary and changing our life when we could, we don't even have to think. You just touch it and your body is absorbing frequencies that might rebalance your emotions. And that is very huge for most people.
Well, thanks for being my guest today. This was so good. I learned so much, which is the whole point. So thanks for being an educator as well. Y'all share this podcast with somebody who is struggling, that does not have to struggle and suffer so much. It's on the screen right now, joshtrent.com/WaveWatch. Thank you for the discount. It's not easy. It's not cheap to make these products. It's Josh100 for $100 off of your brand new watch. And I would just say also, Linda, that, the fact that you're doing it with your family, it just makes me love you guys even more. It's just so cool.
Well, thank you.
It's not easy to do, have a family business. And so the fact that you're able to do that, and how many people have you served? How many people have actually touched the watch and used the watch now?
I think we've sold to about 50,000 people.
50,000 lives.
I mean, we're just starting.
You're just starting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's cheers to 50,000 more. Until we see you again, I'm wishing you love, wellness, but most importantly, peace and power. You cannot have power unless it comes from peace. We'll talk to you soon.